Hello and welcome to Film Whisperers, where two movie nerds talk all things film with a contemporary lens. My name is Saj.
And I'm Alice.
Today we're going to talk about a genre that we both have interest in. Would you say so?
Absolutely.
And what is that genre?
Horror.
Excellent. And I think you're dressed for the occasion.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what would you classify as horror?
Well, that's hard to say. I think for me personally, anything that scares me, really, anything that talks about kind of darker ideas in society.
Yep.
What about you?
I would say the same, but I find anything that gives me that bodily effect of oh my god, I've actually shaken because of what I've seen on screen, rather than those psychological settings. So as an example, I wouldn't classify Black Mirror as horror, but I would classify something that is supernatural as horror.
Okay, so for you, horror is something that's triggering your flight or fight response.
Yeah, that or anything that messes with religion. I grew up Catholic and we had a very religious upbringing. Okay. So because of that, any film that messes with religion and messes with the other world really gets to me.
Right. Yeah.
What about you?
I did not grow up in a religious household. It was choose your own adventure.
Nice.
And I'm the opposite. Anytime they bring some sort of religious Catholicism or something like that into it, I check out. Like, I'm like, okay, it's not scary anymore. Right. Because I don't believe in it. Well, yeah, basically.
So let's start with our favorite horror films.
Okay.
What would you say would be your favorite, or even if you want to talk about your top three?
Okay, if I was going to go highbrow, I'd go The Shining, Psycho, maybe Alien even. Okay. Or Scream. But horror film that like gets me, like I love The Ring. I know you watched that recently. Again, I love that because of what you said, the fight or fight, like anything with the ghost, like that makes me like freak out that I'm still thinking about afterwards. Like I love those horror films.
Okay, so you said The Shining. So out of the three films that you mentioned, two of them have female leads. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
What is it about The Shining that you like?
Oh, I just like how it's shot. I think it's well made, but Stanley Kubrick wasn't the best guy. He treated the lead actress really poorly. So looking back at it in retrospect, I've got mixed feelings about it, but I just think it's shot amazing. We still use a lot of those shots now in films. Like it's always you would know the film just by watching cartoons, The Simpsons, anything. They reference these iconic scenes. And also I watched it when I was a kid. I was way too young and I was absolutely terrified of the naked woman in the bath. Yeah, that still haunts me.
So I guess arguably, because I mean The Shining came out in the 70s, or was it?
Yeah.
So would you say Jack Nicholson was our first Scream Queen?
Oh, maybe. Do you do much screaming though?
Okay, why Alien?
Because Ripley is kick-ass in it. Because actually that's one of those first films where the woman is not the damsel in distress, but she becomes the action star, the one that's getting everything done. And at the start of the film, I think not really supposed to like her that much. She seems really just not that likable. And then everyone starts to like her. And in the second one, she's awesome. Have you seen Alien?
Oh yeah, of course. I would say I probably rewatch Alien and Aliens once every few years. And I think the interesting thing about Alien, and I believe James Cameron did the first two, and he did a gender swap in the last minute.
Right.
And it was meant to be played by a male.
Yeah.
And now we have one of the best feminist movies in history.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting.
All right, Psycho. I'm going to put Psycho up there for me as well. Yeah, I would say, controversial opinion, I freaking love Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah.
And I know he is a complete misogynist.
Yeah.
And he was disgusting to his female stars. Having said that, I'm willing to go kind of put that aside and go, the art that he produced was amazing. And Psycho.
I agree. Yeah.
Psycho is one of them.
It is. It's like one of the first slasher films before slasher was what it is now.
And interesting, with what you see in Psycho, you never see the knife penetrating skin.
Well, it wasn't allowed to.
It wasn't allowed to.
Yeah. What is one of your favorite horror films or favorites?
The Exorcist.
Okay.
Have you seen this?
Of course.
Did you like it?
Yes. I like it for what it is. What do you like about it?
So back to this religious upbringing, I've got a story to tell. Like how you saw The Shining when you were a kid and you were too young. That to me was The Exorcist, and it gave me nightmares. I believe I was 10 when I saw it, and I was told not to watch it.
Yeah.
And what do you do as a 10-year-old? You're going to watch it, and that was me. And it gave me. I was horrified by what I saw. I know a lot of people look at that and find comedic value in the makeup and some of the lines that the possessed child delivers, but to this day when I see that film it scares me because it's I find it really freaky. And when you grow up Catholic, the devil is seen as the enemy, and in a way you get told that that's what could happen to you if you are a bad child. So I don't know, I just have this it just takes me back to my childhood of this is what the devil looks like. And it just really freaks me out.
Literally like ingrained in like it's childhood trauma for you, really, isn't it?
Yes, and 100%. And I would say the films that have come out since that do dabble into demonic possession, they freak me out. So The Conjuring, for example, I've watched all of it, and it really scares me. It really scares me, and I think it's more than just the jump scares, especially with The Conjuring, because there is that reality, there's that real element to it. It's the same with, have you seen The Exorcism of Emily Rose?
Yes.
So that's another one. Again, there's truth to that. Now I know it can be argued that that's probably not true, and science says that that's impossible. You know what, there's probably accuracy to that, but just as a horror film, it really scared me.
Part of it, right, is suspending your disbelief with horror in particular. It's like you go with the flow. They take you somewhere and they're still going to scare you. You know it's not real, but you're still scared and you'll still think about it and you'll still look in the shadows when it's late at night.
100%. So is there a horror genre that you won't go near?
As I've gotten older, I think I try to stay away from films. Not that I won't watch them, but I don't like really gratuitous violence. Like, it just turns my stomach, and I think that it's scarier when you can't see the monster. Like, I'm gonna make it more of a messed up monster than the director is. So yeah, I don't like to see that real violence, like cutting people up or rape. That's not my jam.
I would say the same. I would say there are films out there that I have absolutely no interest in seeing. I've heard a lot about. For example, I've heard this film called Hostel. And I've been told about how graphic it is in terms of its violence and its gore, and I don't need to see that. The really gory film. I've seen Hostel. Like, I liked it as a teenager. I'm not gonna lie, but and I do find, but it's that slow torture that's what I don't like. Kind of like Saw's, kind of similar. The slowness of it. They're really like taking their time with the violence. But I do like it when it's fast sometimes, like Final Destination, where it's a bit campy and it's a bit like the head pops or something like that. But so you just mentioned campy, and I think it's a good segue to talk about horror and camp. Do you believe all horror films tend to be camp? No, not really. I think if it's exaggerated, I guess. Like, I couldn't say no. I don't think it's black or white. What do you think? It's a hard one, because what is camp? I mean, it's over the top, right? Over the top, exaggerated. There's a little bit of funny. I mean, death is, I think, definitely for me, like my family, it's like there's a little bit of funny humor to it. 100%. Because it's just part of life, and it's good to just laugh at what you can't control. I think there is a little bit, but I think it really depends on how it's shot and the subject matter. I wouldn't say that some of the revenge
rape revenge films are necessarily campy, like The Nightingale, for example. Have you seen that, the
Yes.
Australian one?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that's campy.
I wouldn't even call that horror though.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
See, I would,
Yeah,
because it's realism horror kind
yeah,
of thing,
yeah. Okay.
in my opinion. Yeah, what's your favorite kind of campy horror film?
That's a hard one
Mm.
because what is camp?
What is camp?
Yeah,
And why do horror and comedy go so well together?
that's a good question as well. And another thing I'd like to explore is why do you reckon there is that LGBT following with
Mm.
horror? I believe it's probably the way films can be shot
Mm-hmm.
and people's sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think depending on the type of personality you have, you might think that some horror films are a bit funny. So let's take Psycho, for example. I bet there are people who, towards the end where you find out that it's a skeleton all
Oh
the
yeah.
time.
And he
I
comes
bet,
out
yeah,
in a dress.
exactly. And
Yeah.
I bet there might be some people that find that bit funny.
Mm-hmm.
My partner laughs at The Exorcist. So I remember us watching it together, and if someone could have only filmed the way we both just digested that film,
Yeah.
I was there still scared,
Mm.
and he just could not stop saying "Your mother sucks cocks in hell" like over and over again because he thought that was hilarious, and the
Yeah.
pea soup that she intends to
Oh,
just anyway
yeah, the vom-
yeah, the vomit, and he just thought it was hilarious, and
Yeah.
and he, you know what, that would be a film that a lot of people would consider camp.
Yeah, at least now. Back in the day, maybe not so much.
No.
But because maybe there was more religion back in the day when it was for its intended audience, there was more religion.
Yes.
It was like 60.
It was 1970. I think.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, so maybe that's part of it. But coming back to comedy and horror, I think what works, and I have read up on this a little bit, I can't remember, it was a while ago, but both horror and comedy, they kind of set up this tension and then they allow you to release it, like by laughing or screaming or something. So there's that, the dun it, and you get stressed out, and then you get the scare, and then your endorphins run, and you relax. Now you've done that fight or flight kind of situation. And with comedy, they set it up, and then you're laughing. So I think it's got that same physical reaction, and that's why people maybe like horror and they also like comedy, and then they obviously like them together.
Yes. Okay.
I think that's why they work.
That's very interesting.
That's one
That's
reason.
one of the reasons. So, what are your thoughts on the term scream queen?
I really don't get it. I don't know that. I think it really is just talking about that there's a lot of women in the horror that scream. Is that all they're really saying? What is it?
I think it's the casting of women in lead roles, and then putting them through psychological torture, in my opinion. I think maybe a lot of them don't really scream, but they're seen in distress.
Yeah.
A lot of the time. I don't know. This is when I struggle. Is it giving women opportunity, giving women roles, or is it detrimental because we're putting them in roles, but what we're seeing being done to them is not right?
Yeah, that's a big grey area, because I mean, horror from the start, there was always a damsel in distress from Nosferatu in 1922, I think it was. But that's where women were placed, in that they were the damsel in distress to be saved. They were virginal, pure. And then we've kind of come to where we are now. Maybe the 80s with the resurgence, you see the slasher film where they stay pure and then they're the final girl. But anyone else has any power with them, that owns their own body sexually, they're going to be knocked off. And then we kind of are playing with those ideas now. I think that we get to see women's point of views, to see what they're actually afraid of. So in that retrospect, it's good that we're seeing, I think it allows feminism to have a place in horror, but I think it depends who's telling the story and from what perspective it is. I mean, if we were just seeing it from the killer's point of view, or the character has no development, she's just a woman with big tits that gets stabbed, then that's not really feminist. But I see what you're talking about. You're talking about the violence that we're seeing in women, and it's mostly women. We don't really see that with men. I think it shows that men get killed off a lot quicker than the women do. There's something sexual about it.
Yeah, and you think of some of the really popular franchises, it's horror franchises, they do have female leads. You have Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween. And I think, now that's an interesting franchise because I feel as if there's absolutely no character development for Laurie Strode. All she does is just run away. That's pretty much her role until...
And she's a good girl.
She's a good girl. Until I feel the Halloween film that happened, I think it was 2020, where they used Mike Myers to show what post-traumatic stress is and what it does to a person. And I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah.
But other than that, before that, it was just, all she did was run away. Same with Neve Campbell in the Scream franchise. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, she does run away. But I think that with Scream in particular, they were kind of... she was one of the first women. She broke that rule of she can have sex kind of thing. They were looking at what the horror film was. So that, I mean, it's a little bit different.
Have you seen When a Stranger Calls?
Yes.
Okay, that's another one, right? There's no character development in that whatsoever, but it gave the opportunity for, I think she was the only character for majority of the film. Yeah. And it was a female lead.
I think we can be a little bit harsh in when we look back at the films, which we should. We should look at what's happening and how the writing's changed. But I think that for what it was at the time, it was still good that it was a female lead. And now when we look at films now, I think that they mostly have character development, would you say?
Yeah, I'd say so.
So, I mean, it's good to see that point, that starting point, but we can see that there's been a natural progression and now the women have more agency. And I think with a good film reflects society at that time. And that's one of the great things about horror is you can see what society was really fearful at that time. You mentioned that with Halloween, now one of the recent ones, they talk about post-traumatic stress. And I think that in society, we really take mental health into consideration. And then a lot of horror films, even the Babadook and stuff like that, they discuss those fears and they don't just say, she's crazy, she's hysteria, she's on a period. It's actually looking at what's happening with post-traumatic stress disorder, what's happening to people as they live on. And they have a look at what mental health does to people and why people kill as well.
Okay, that's interesting. The other thing that I was also going to talk to you about was the racial representation in horror films. And I think another one of my favorite horror movies that came out in the last 10 years has got to be Get Out. Yeah. And I think that there was something so interesting about that film because it was, in a way, it was about whitewashing, but it was almost like the Stepford Wives, but done with the racial element to it. And I feel as if there aren't many people of colour in horror movies, and that's another thing I find quite interesting. Yeah. And a lot of the time, it tends to be more Caucasian characters that lead these films, and I think Jordan Peele's probably changing that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Have you seen Talk to Me?
Yes.
What did you think?
Oh, so good. Yes. I loved it. I mean, yeah, it was a person of colour as the lead.
Correct.
The lead, yeah. She was amazing.
She was amazing, yeah. Why do you think that might be the case?
I do hear, and this could be wrong, but I heard that the creator of that film actually lost $1 million because he decided to use that actor as the lead. I don't know if that's to do with colour or not, or just because they were an unknown at the time, but something to think about. Yeah. I'm not sure why, but I have a feeling it's mostly racism. Yeah. And the fact that Okay, are we talking more about slasher kind of horror
Yeah,
films?
or any, like for example, Get Out is the only film I can think of with a person of color
Yeah,
as in the lead, and
yeah,
has um, more than one person of color in it. I think the only other film that comes to mind is the sequel to I Know What You Did Last Summer, which had
yeah,
Brandy in it.
yeah.
But I can't
I
think
mean,
of
there's
yeah.
there's the Candyman,
I haven't seen that.
but the Candyman. Oh, you should watch that.
All right. Okay. Cool.
Okay,
Yeah.
watch that and we'll discuss it. But it's the main the killer
Yeah.
is a person of color. I think it's in New York, but
Okay.
I think have a look at it and then we'll discuss it. I think that if we look at the history of horror, it basically horror plays with power.
Yeah.
And so it's showing someone that has no power. And so we're talking about the damsel in distress. And the damsel in distress historically has been this ultra pure, ultra white woman. Like we see in media, the stories that are talked about a woman that's been murdered, if they're white, they're going to have more coverage, or, someone's got drugs in their boogie board and everyone's talking about her because she's a pretty white woman. So I wonder if it's just part of that, if they think it sells. I know that I'm not interested in that, and it was really refreshing to watch Talk to Me. I didn't even think about that the lead was of color, but yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess the final thing I was going to talk to you about was, why do you think in media horror is not taken seriously? And I think to this day, I don't believe there have been many accolades for horror movies. I mean, Get Out was an exception, but you think of some of the work that these actresses do. Like, I recently watched The Ring with Naomi Watts. She's great in it.
So good.
So good. Even The Grudge with Sarah Michelle Gellar. She's great. Hereditary, I believe Toni Collette was snubbed. She did not. She did not get an Oscar nomination for it. Why do you think that's the case? Because these actresses do some amazing work. They're being chased by someone, or someone's trying to kill them. It's an emotional role.
Yeah. The people that give these awards kind of put horror in this box, kind of like how you would, and I kind of agree with them, but I don't agree with them. Marvel films, for example, superhero films, you kind of put them in a box, but I think that's probably part of it. I mean, it started from the way back in the beginning, but Alfred Hitchcock, I think he was famous for, when he finally did get an award, an Oscar, I think he walked up there and said, thank you, and then walked off, because it was like about time, pretty much.
Right.
I'm not sure why. I think they're just putting it in a box. What do you think it is?
Sexism, partly, and I believe, I believe that personally, I think women tend to be way better performers than men, hands down. And you think of, like, everyone talks about how amazing Leonardo DiCaprio is. I don't think he's a good actor at all. And I think that a lot of the time, the content that women have to work with, they work hard with it. And I just think that when it comes to horror, maybe it's the way some of these horror films are perceived, where it's camp, it's just meh, there's nothing really meaty about it, so why should we take it seriously? But then again, interestingly, Get Out, it has a male lead, and look what happened, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know, I think it's probably because there's definitely a sexist element to it.
Yeah, because like we were saying, I mean, a lot of these female-led horror films, it is talking about women in power and the empower balance, and them trying to fight back on usually a male person that's after them.
Yeah.
So I do wonder if that is part of it. Yeah. That there's a sexism.
And you think of some of the more popular horror films that people to this day talk about, like The Shining. Male lead, and look at how much credit it got. To this day, it gets spoofed because it is that popular.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel as if there's definitely an element of sexism to it.
Yeah. Oh, you blow my mind. Yeah, I guess that's probably it. I'm gonna have to read up more on this.
Yeah. 100%.
Or maybe we should write something.
100%. I think that draws us to the end of our conversation today. So I take it I'm required to watch The Candyman?
Yes. And what do I need to watch? Anything?
Probably just rewatch The Exorcist.
Rewatch The Exorcist. Yeah, I will.
Thank you for watching The Film Whisperers here on Ben TV. My name is Saj.
And I'm Alice.
Thank you.
Thanks.